There's one day we refuse to think about when we first hold a puppy in our hands. We think about everything else: how he'll grow, how he'll learn to bring the ball back instead of running off with it, how one day he'll stop being afraid of the vacuum cleaner. We count the years ahead, 10, 12, 15 if we're lucky. And somewhere at the very edge of our minds sits a piece of knowledge we push down as far as it will go. Their time is shorter than ours. We outlive them, every single time. That's the price of this love, and we start paying it early. Every time we look at a graying muzzle and pretend we didn't notice. But here's the thing: most people aren't afraid of the loss itself. Most people are afraid of missing it, of not understanding, of being in the kitchen refilling a water bowl and thinking about work while their dog was already speaking, quietly, in her own way, with her whole body. That fear comes at night, and it always sounds the same. What if I don't realize she's saying goodbye? Here's the good news: dogs almost never leave in silence. They can't explain it in words, but they have a language of their own, a language of footsteps, of breath, of warmth, of the way they look at you. And that language can be learned, not to bring the end closer, to make sure they aren't alone in it, the way they never once left us alone. Today, we're going to walk through 10 of those signals. We'll start with the earliest and the easiest to miss, and end with the ones that come in the final hours. Along the way, you'll hear from people who have already walked this road and wrote to us about it, not to make it hurt more, so that you know you're not the first, and you're not on your own. Pour yourself something warm. If your dog is near you right now, put a hand on her side. Let her stay there while we talk. Let's begin with the thing you'll probably notice first: the way she walks. 1. Steps that stop obeying it. Usually doesn't start with a fall. It starts with a pause. Your dog walks up to the couch she's jumped onto 1,000 times and stops, looks up, weighs it, and then lies down on the floor beside it, as if she simply changed her mind. Then comes the sound: nails scraping across laminate as the back legs slide out sideways. That careful, glassy walk across smooth floors. A hesitation before standing. She lifts her front half, then freezes, gathering herself for the second half of the job. Sometimes there are short, aimless circles around the room, as though she's forgotten where she was going. This isn't laziness, and it isn't stubbornness. There are very concrete things underneath it. Arthritis that's been quietly building in the joints for years, muscle loss that vets call sarcopenia, and a fading sense of proprioception, the body's awareness of where its own legs are in space. In very old dogs, walking speed can drop dramatically, sometimes by half or more compared to their own prime. The body stops being a reliable tool and starts being cargo. What can be done here should be done, and it isn't complicated. Runners and rugs along every smooth stretch of the route. Bed to bowl, bowl to door. A ramp instead of a jump. A gate at the stairs. The fur between the paw pads trimmed short. It's slipperier than most people realize. A support harness with a handle on the back so you can lift her without grabbing under the belly. Marina wrote to us, "My Storm was a shepherd, 80 pounds of confidence. For the last 6 months, I carried him down the stairs to the yard. He weighed about what I weigh. I thought it was hard on me. Then I understood it was harder on him. Not the weight of it, but the fact that he couldn't do it himself anymore." Helping a dog move isn't about forcing her to keep going. It's about handing back her dignity. And while you're watching her feet, something else is already changing deeper in the place where her body has kept its own temperature her entire life. 2. A body that forgets how to keep warm. One day you notice she's shivering in a room that feels perfectly fine to you, or the opposite, panting hard on a cool evening without having moved an inch. Finding the one patch of sunlight on the floor and staying in it until the last of it slides off. Or lying on the cold bathroom tile for hours, somewhere she never used to go. Temperature is managed by the hypothalamus, a small region of the brain that works like a thermostat. With age, it loses precision. At the same time, the muscle that generates heat is disappearing. The layer of fat that holds it in is thinning. And the heart that pushes warm blood out to the paws and ears isn't pumping the way it used to. The result is a dog who can no longer hold a steady temperature from the inside, and starts looking for it on the outside, in your house, in your room, in you. Pay attention to the ears, the paws, and the tip of the tail. In a dog who is close to the end, they get noticeably cooler than the rest of her. It's one of the most honest early signs there is. What helps? A bed moved away from drafts and cold exterior walls, an extra blanket, a warm, not hot, heat pack wrapped in a towel. In summer, a fan, a cooling mat, fresh water, shade. And one simple rule. If she dragged herself to the other end of the room, she had a reason. Don't carry her back. Move the bed to where she went. Olga sent us a single line, and it holds the whole thing. The last 3 weeks, Barney slept against the radiator. I put his blanket there for him. He'd come over to me just to check I was still where I was supposed to be, and then he'd go back to the heat. Warmth is one of the last things we can still give. Give it generously. The next sign shows up in a place you look at every morning. The bowl. 3. The bowl that stays full. Dogs take food very seriously. That's exactly why a fading appetite frightens people more than almost anything else. At first it looks like fussiness. The kibble stays in the bowl, but a piece of chicken off the counter still disappears in half a second. Then she comes to the bowl, sniffs it for a long moment, and walks away. Then she takes 2 or 3 mouthfuls and lies down. Then she stops coming at all. There's usually more than one reason at once. Smell and taste dull with age, and a dog eats with her nose first. Food that smells like nothing to her stops being food. Bad teeth and sore gums turn chewing into labor. Nausea from failing kidneys or a failing liver kills interest in everything. And at the very end, something switches on that human hospice workers know well. A body that is shutting down stops asking for fuel. It isn't building or repairing anymore. It's finishing. What's worth trying, while trying still makes sense, warm the food to body temperature, which multiplies the smell. Switch to soft food or soak the kibble. Add plain broth with no salt and no onion. Hand feed if the bowl isn't working. Offer small amounts often instead of one large meal. But there's a line here, and it matters that you see it in time. Force feeding at the end doesn't extend life. It extends discomfort. A dog who refuses food in her final days isn't being difficult and isn't giving up. She's doing what every living thing does at this point. Ask your vet about anti-nausea medication and appetite stimulants if they're appropriate, but put comfort above calories. Sometimes the most loving thing available to you is to take the bowl away and just sit down next to her. And after food, the water almost always follows. 4. The water that goes untouched. A healthy dog drinks without thinking about it. Thirst is one of the most reliable instincts there is, running automatically for a whole lifetime, which is why its disappearance says so much. The mechanism is the same as with appetite, but the consequences arrive faster. Aging kidneys stop concentrating urine, so more fluid leaves the body, while the thirst center in the brain responds more and more weakly. It's a pair of scissors closing. Losses go up, and the signal to drink doesn't come. Dehydration sets in quietly, with no dramatic moment to mark it. You can check it in 5 seconds. Lift the skin at the scruff and let go. In a dehydrated dog, it sinks back slowly, like a tent collapsing. Touch the gums. They should be wet and slick, not tacky and dry. The eyes may look slightly sunken. Small things help. Several bowls in different rooms, so crossing the house isn't required. A raised bowl if bending down hurts. Water mixed into food. Ice chips, which a lot of dogs will lick when they won't drink. A needle-free syringe delivering a little water into the side of the mouth, if she isn't fighting it. Your vet can also show you how to give fluids under the skin at home. For a lot of families, this turns out to be surprisingly manageable, and it can make the last days considerably easier. And the same rule as with food. Don't pour it in against her will. 1 swallow she takes herself is worth 10 you administered. Dimitri wrote, "That last week, Shadow would only drink from my hand, not from the bowl. From the hand, yes. I still don't know what that was about, but I sat on the kitchen floor with a wet palm, and I'd have sat there as long as she wanted." When a body stops taking in food and water both, the change becomes visible from the outside.
5. The weight that melts away. You run your hand down her back, and suddenly there's a spine under your fingers. Then ribs. Then hollows above the eyes and sharp wings of hip bone that simply weren't there before. It can happen fast, over a few weeks, and it frightens people more than almost anything on this list. Because it's the first change that can't be filed away as, she's just tired today. Here's what's important to understand. This often isn't a question of how much she's eating. There's a condition vets call cachexia, in which the body breaks down its own muscle even while the dog is still taking food. Chronic kidney disease, heart failure, and cancer all trigger inflammatory processes that make the body consume itself. So the people who cook, coax, supplement, and beg, and watch their dog shrink anyway, have not failed at anything. This is not a calorie contest that was lost. It's a different process entirely. Practically, switch to food with high-quality protein unless your vet has restricted it because of the kidneys. Watch the bony points that now sit right against the surface because pressure sores form there fast and they need real cushioning. Raise the bowls so eating doesn't cost energy, and weigh her once a week, writing the numbers down. Those notes will help your vet enormously. They'll also help you later when a decision has to be made and you find yourself doubting your own memory. A thinning body holds energy poorly, and the next thing to go is movement itself. 6. Sleep that runs longer than the day. Old dogs sleep a lot. That's normal. Dogs who are leaving sleep differently. The difference isn't the number of hours, it's what stops interrupting them. Keys in the hallway, the crinkle of a treat bag, her own name. Every one of those used to lift her head and knock her tail against the floor twice, even from half sleep. Now, nothing. She lies in one position for hours, breathing, occasionally letting out a long sigh. This isn't laziness, and it isn't depression in the human sense. It's rationing. The body is shutting down everything non-essential and holding what's left for basic functions. Add anemia from failing kidneys, a tired heart, and the constant background ache of arthritis that wears a dog out even lying still. What matters most here is not trying to snap her out of it. Don't call her for a walk to perk her up. Don't wake her. Don't nudge. Instead, an orthopedic mattress or a genuinely thick bed so the bones don't grind. Turning her every 4 to 6 hours if she isn't getting up on her own, which protects against pressure sores and fluid settling in the lungs. A warm, damp cloth for the eyes and muzzle. Slow massage of the shoulders and hips if she welcomes it. And presence, just sitting down on the floor and resting a hand on her. A dog in this state may not get up to greet you. She still knows you came. Out of that stillness comes the next sign, the one families most often describe as the most undignified for the dog, and the most unfair. 7. When the body stops asking permission. A dog who spent 14 years holding it and scratching at the door wakes up in a wet bed, and the first thing you'll see isn't the mess, it's her face. Most dogs in that moment look away, flatten their ears, try to crawl off to the side. They don't understand what happened, but they know they've broken something that mattered. There's no guilt to assign here. Sphincters are muscles, and they weaken along with all the others. Spinal nerves carry the signal less reliably. Cognitive decline erases a rule that took years to learn. And sometimes it's simpler than any of that. She physically cannot stand and walk there, even though she knows perfectly well that she should. So the first thing to do is say out loud that it's fine. In your normal, calm voice, the same one you use for praise. She won't understand the words, she'll understand the tone, and she'll understand that you aren't angry. Then the practical side. Absorbent pads under the bedding and a spare set ready to go. Washing with warm water and drying thoroughly every time. Urine damages skin fast and on a thin, immobile dog that turns into open sores within days. Barrier cream on the areas at risk. Fur trimmed short on the back legs and around the tail. Carrying her out on a schedule rather than on request, every 3 or 4 hours for as long as that's possible. Natalie sent us a line worth keeping. I was washing blankets twice a day, and one morning I caught myself being irritated. Then I looked at her and thought,
She cleaned up after my crying for 14 years and never once made a face about it. When control over the body slips this far, it usually means the nervous system is affected more deeply, and that can bring the thing people dread most.
8. The shaking you can't stop. Seizures are the most frightening thing on this whole road, and they almost always happen at night when there's nobody in the house but you. The body goes rigid, the legs paddle, the head arches back, the breathing turns harsh. Sometimes there's involuntary urination. Sometimes it's much smaller, a fine tremor in the face or along one flank. The dog is generally not conscious during this and is not experiencing pain, however unbearable it looks from where you're standing. At this stage, there are usually two causes: hepatic encephalopathy, when the liver can no longer neutralize toxins and they reach the brain, and uremia, when failing kidneys do the same thing by a different route. Less commonly, a brain tumor or a sharp drop in blood sugar. What to do during a seizure, briefly. Don't put your hands near the mouth. The swallowed tongue myth doesn't apply to dogs, and the bite will be serious. Clear hard objects and furniture away. Lower the lights and the noise. Slide something soft under the head. Note the time. Speak calmly, because hearing is the last thing to go. Afterwards, she'll be disoriented for 20 or 30 minutes. Offer water, and don't panic if she doesn't recognize you immediately. And there's an honest conversation to have before this happens, rather than after. A seizure lasting more than 5 minutes, or several in a row, is an emergency. Talk to your vet in advance about what you'll actually do at 3 in the morning. For a lot of families, this is exactly where the conversation about euthanasia begins. So let's say it plainly. Choosing to help a dog go without suffering is not surrender. It's the last decision we make for them, rather than for ourselves. There are quality of life scales that veterinary hospice teams use. They score pain, appetite, mobility, hygiene, and whether the dog can still take pleasure in anything. They exist precisely so that in this moment, a person has something to lean on besides their own grief. Ask your vet about them. After the seizures, or without them, comes the sign you hear before you see. 9. Breathing that loses its rhythm. In the last days, the house gets very quiet, and that's when you start to hear her breathe. It changes. It can go fast and shallow, as though she's just run somewhere when she hasn't stood up in a day. It can come with an open mouth and an extended neck, the posture animals take when air isn't coming easily. The abdomen may start doing the work, the flanks pumping visibly harder than the chest, or there's a wet, rattling sound on the inhale. Then the pauses arrive. The breathing speeds up, slows down, stops for a few seconds, and starts again. That rising and falling pattern is well known in hospice care and usually means the process has entered its final phase. At the very end, breaths become slow, deep, and gasping, with long gaps between them. It looks like a struggle. But clinicians who have sat through this hundreds of times agree on one point. Consciousness is already gone, and she is not feeling the horror that you are feeling watching her. There's very little to do with your hands here. Raise the head and chest slightly to make it easier. Open a window or turn on a fan. Moving air genuinely relieves the sensation of not getting enough. Don't cover her face. Ask your vet about medication for breathlessness. A small dose can change the last hours more than most people expect. And stay. Sit so that your hand rests on her ribs and rises with every breath. Talk. It doesn't matter about what. Hearing goes last, and your voice is the only navigation she has left. There's one more sign. It isn't in the body at all, and it's the quietest of them all. 10. The last conversation without words. At the very end, something shifts in the bond itself, and it shows up in exactly two opposite ways. Some dogs withdraw. They wedge themselves under the bed, behind the sofa, into the far corner of the garden, into a closet they've never once entered in their lives. This is ancient behavior. A weakened animal looks for cover because somewhere very deep it's written that vulnerability must be hidden. It isn't sulking and it isn't rejection. It's an instinct older than the domestic dog. Others do precisely the opposite. A dog who slept happily in another room her whole life suddenly won't let you out of her sight. She follows you into the bathroom. She puts her head on your foot and leaves it there.
She wakes and searches the room with her eyes until she finds you. They look like two different messages. They're saying the same thing. This is hard. Stay with me. Sometimes a third thing gets added. Confusion. She stares at a wall,
Stands with her nose in a corner, doesn't know you for 2 seconds, and then does.
goes to the hinge side of the door. That's canine cognitive dysfunction, the dog version of dementia, and it doesn't cancel a single one of the 14 years you've had together. The memory is just further down than she can reach right now. Don't take it personally. Don't test her by calling her name over and over. Keep the world in the order she knows. The same smells, the same roots, the same voice. If she goes into a corner, don't drag her out. Follow her and sit down beside her. If she clings, let her. Cancel whatever can be canceled. These are days you will remember whole. All 10 signs rarely arrive together and almost never in order. For some families, the road takes 6 months. For others, 4 days. Some of this you'll see. Some of it you never will. But if you've stayed with us this long, then you're the kind of person for whom a dog was never just an animal. Which means you're already doing the thing that matters most. You're paying attention. And paying attention is the exact form of love they understand best. Dogs don't fear death the way we do. They have no calendar and no picture of the future. They only have now. Warmth, quiet, a familiar smell, a hand on the ribs. Everything they need at the end, you already have. You don't need to be a vet. You don't need to be strong. You need to be there. If your dog is young and healthy right now, close this video and go find her. Right now. She won't understand why you suddenly sat down on the floor and put your arms around her, but she'll be delighted about it. And if you've already walked this road, you are not alone in the silence that still wakes you at 4 a.m. People say dogs come back in dreams. Nobody can prove it, and honestly, none of us needs the proof.
Tell us about him or her in the comments.
A name, one habit, one ridiculous thing you used to scold them for and miss now. The people reading here will understand without explanation. And if you know someone who's in the middle of this, send it to them. Nobody should have to say goodbye alone. Behind the bark. Thank you for being here with us.